What's up guys, my name is Fran and welcome back to the channel. This channel is all about cinematography, videography, making ready to videos and everything in between. So if you're into that kind of thing, consider hitting the subscribe button below. Alright, so in today's video, I wanted to talk about my favorite smartphone application, Filmic Pro. Now, Filmic Pro is a smartphone application that works on Android as well as iOS devices, such as this guy right here. This is the old but kind of new iPhone XS Max. So this phone is really cool, and one of the improvements that Apple did in this generation is actually the improvement of the camera. But the only true way to get the full potential out of that camera is to use third-party applications, such as Filmic Pro. Alright, so what I wanted to do is actually show you guys around the actual application and show you some of the capabilities of it. I'm not going to go through everything and all this nitty-gritty, but I do think a lot of the features I want to show off are pretty cool. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just get this thing focused here on Han Solo. Okay, so the really cool thing about this application is, like I said, it has a ton of really cool features and functionalities. Starting off over on the right-hand side, you can see your audio meters. This is pretty cool for using an external microphone or even using the internal microphones on the actual phone itself. It's just going to show you if you're, clipping any of your audio or anything like that. Of course, you're going to have your record button and you have your playback button, so you can record or playback some of the footage that you just recently recorded. You also have a ton of capabilities under the gear in the settings section, so you can do things such as modify your resolution. You can, go for anywhere from 1080p to 4K. There's also 3K and 2K as well. You also have the ability to modify the bitrate you're recording in. So you have Apple Standard, Filmic Quality, and Filmic Extreme, which is going to be your highest bitrate, and it's going to give you the best quality image. Now, another really cool thing in this feature here, or in this section here, is actually the ability to change your actual aspect ratios of your image. So one thing that I find to be really useful is the 1:1 aspect ratio. This is going to let you make really cool Instagram ready videos, so you don't have to really worry about things being outside of your frame. Everything's going to line up perfectly. And over in some of your other sections, you have the ability to modify your frame rate as well. So of course, this particular iPhone is capable of shooting up from 4K, 60 frames per second. And you also, if you go down to 1080p, you're able to shoot up to 240 frames per second. So this is where you'd be able to go ahead and modify it. If you want the more cinematic look, you're probably going to go down to something like 24 frames per second. But if you want to do something that's going to be maybe higher frame rate and slow it down in post, shooting at 4K 60 is going to be ideal. When it comes to some of the audio features, you have a couple of capabilities, such as modifying which microphone you want to use. So you have a bottom one, a front, and a back microphone. So that's really cool as well. You also have the ability to pair it up with different pieces of hardware. So for example, if you have something like the DJI Osmo, this actually is fully compatible with that gimbal. So you can do so, get really smooth shots and it'll work out really well for you. You also have the ability to turn stabilization on and off. So it's pretty important if you're flying it on something like a gimbal, you're going to have the ability to turn that off. You don't want any wobbly video or anything like that. And then there's a couple other features, but the last one I want to highlight, which is the ability for you to select the different lenses. So you have the telephoto lens here, and you also have the good old selfie lens that you can switch to as well, which I think is pretty cool. Now, this is exactly a tutorial, so I don't want to go into too many of the features of the actual application, but there are a couple other really cool things I want to talk about, like these two boxes, the circle and the square. The square is actually for your focus, so if you want to focus on something, and the circle is actually for your exposure. So if you want to expose to something such as maybe this light that I have here, if I was to just move the circle over onto that, we would actually notice the exposure, it would expose correctly for that. So that's actually a pretty cool feature if you want to specifically tune in your exposure. Now, speaking of exposure, if you actually tap on it, it's going to lock in, and anytime the icon turns red, that means it's going to lock in, and even if you move it around, aim it on something else, it's not going to change. But if you actually hold it, it's actually going to bring up, if you hold it, there we go. So if you hold it, it's actually going to bring in the manual dial. So you have the ability to manually dial in your ISO as well as your shutter speed. And this is pretty powerful because me personally, I'll get you everything in manual, and I want to make sure I get the least amount of noise possible. So I want to be able to control my ISO. Now again, I keep saying there's more features. There's a ton of other features, but just a few more that I want to highlight. You do have the ability to do cool things like zebra as well as focus pulling, so you can see what's in focus by actually tapping on these icons here. There's a couple of things I don't quite know how to use or understand, but also Also here you have different types of white balance that you can modify. So if you want to change the color temperature to something a little bit cooler, a little bit warmer, you can really sit here and modify it with this little dial right here. You can go back to auto white balance and let the camera choose what's the best white balance, which is something I like to do every once in a while. And then finally, you do have the ability to use different color modes. So you have a neutral color space, you have a dynamic color space, which gives you really nice and saturated color. You're gonna have a flat color space, which is not log, but it does have, for an additional fee, you have the log functionality. So you can shoot on log and get the most dynamic range out of your smartphone. And there's much, much more to talk about, too much to talk about in this video because I don't want it to be too long, but this application is really freaking cool. Okay, so as far as the actual cost for the application, when I bought it, it was about $15, and it was an additional $15 to unlock the log functionality, which I definitely think is almost a requirement if you want to get that maximum dynamic range, but it's not something you necessarily mean if you're okay with using the colors that come directly out of the smartphone. Overall though, I think it's a must-have for any cinematographer who really wants to unlock the full potential of their smartphone and definitely shoot some awesome videos. But that is it. I don't want to make this video too long and boring. If you guys are into this kind of thing, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I plan on bringing you guys a lot more videos, maybe some tutorials on how to actually use these things. I'll probably post up some of the footage I shot on this as well in a separate video. But yeah, that's it. Once again, guys, my name is Fran. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in my next one.